Number 10. Pokemon Creepy Black. I enjoy playing Pokemon hacks and hunting down their cartridges at flea markets. Sometimes they are unplayable and sometimes they are unintentionally awful, but I find the games to be enjoyable and how funny they are. One such cartridge which I was playing was called Pokemon Black, but it was actually a hacked version of Pokemon Red. In the game you got your starter, but in addition started with a Pokemon known as Ghost. Ghost had one attack, Curse. If you used it in battle, it would kill the Pokemon or trainer you used it against, causing the Pokemon and their Pokeball to disappear from the game, or leaving a tombstone in the spot where you first met that trainer. Number 9. Pokemon Go Experience. My friend and I love playing Pokemon Go in the park near my house, but we've never ventured into the woods nearby. One day we decided we'd check it out and try to catch some Pokemon in there. We were having fun playing, but became a bit turned around and lost. We weren't worried though, as we both had our phones and both had a strong signal on them. As we talked and wandered around exploring, I looked up to see my friend. He was crying with his head in his hand. He wouldn't look at me, but told me the stairs behind me were scaring him. Stairs, I wondered, but we're in a forest. But sure enough, when I turned around, there they were, a set of wooden stairs that looked almost new. He told me not to climb them, but I wasn't scared and I wanted to check if they were real. They were. When I got to the top though, I felt lightheaded and dizzy. I turned around, but it almost felt as though my body was moving independent of me, as though I was experiencing sleep paralysis and couldn't control myself. Then I noticed giant, humanoid pale spider legs in the corner of my eye, climbing up a tree next to me. I recovered control and bolted out of the forest with my friend in tow. Needless to say, I have yet to return to that park anytime soon, and my friend still won't talk to me because he's still so freaked out. Number 8. Pokemon Gray. One day when I was going to play Pokemon, I noticed a cartridge among my games that didn't seem familiar. I'd never seen it before. On it was the name Pokemon Gray, and it seemed to be made out of something other than plastic, something smoother and harder. But it fit in my console just fine, and I booted it up to check it out, as I'd never remembered getting it or hearing of Pokemon Gray ever before. The load screen and gameplay were different. Everything was darker, and all the characters in Pokemon seemed to be skeletal versions of themselves. When I went to select my starter Pokemon, Professor Oak told me after I picked the skeletal Bulbasaur that there would be a price, and that Bulbasaur was not complete. He needed something from me. My bones. I shut the console off immediately and threw it against the wall. When I got enough courage, I went to retrieve it and checked out the cartridge. It had a crack in it, and that's when I noticed that it was made out of a different material than the others. It was made of human bone.
And at 7, Hoopa. Hoopa and I were friends. I thought we were best buds. There's no words to describe the kind of connection we had. That's until I died, at least. In the Pokemon world, some kids who die end up turning into Pokemon. I myself got lost in the woods while on a walk with Hoopa, so I ended up becoming a Phantump. If I was a Kadabra, I'd be able to let Hoopa know who I am, but they can't understand a Phantump. After I died though, Hoopa kinda lost it. It changed to its unbound form since it was no longer by my side and terrorized as many people as possible, even some of the search parties for me. I'm starting to worry about what it will do next, and if they ever cared about me in the first place, or if it knew what would happen in that forest. It's been 10 years now, and Hoopa is with another boy. They came back into my forest. You'd think that Hoopa would avoid that since what happened last time, but then I see it smirk. It knows what's about to happen. Hoopa quickly opens a wormhole and heads through, but not before looking at me, now a Trevenant, and winking. And at 6, good night. I used to have trouble sleeping. I tried all that I could, sleeping pills, NyQuil, more pills. I even tried Pokemon, but even Jigglypuff couldn't put me to sleep. But then I found her, Meloetta. Meloetta is like my soulmate. We work together in harmony. She helps put me to sleep, and I help her with her mission. Everyone is sound asleep now. They were all having such a hard time. With the sun out, it's nearly impossible to sleep. But now, they can all sleep for as long as they want. Meloetta helps me sleep. She sings to me. It's like everything is a dream. Such a perfect life. Singing and sleeping is essentially the life of my dreams. Halfway through number 5, Pokemon. Pokemon is so addictive. It's like the most illicit substance on the planet, but it's legal. It's like PETA and the devil had a baby and then they turned it into a reality. I have plenty of Pokemon. I can't always keep them in their ball, but whenever they're out, they seem happy. They love to go outside and run around in the backyard. Luckily, I don't have any flying types, otherwise they might fly away. My parents think I have too many Pokemon, but you gotta catch them all, right? Even Pokemon Control thinks I have too many. They keep trying to take them away, but whenever whatever they do, I go back, get my Pokemon back, and grab another one while I'm at it too. It's like Pokemon Control is Team Rocket and I'm Ash. I tried putting a Pokemon in my PC a while ago, but it didn't work. It just started smelling funny, so I threw it out. Pokemon Control can take that one. My parents seem concerned, but can't they just see that I'm having fun with my life? Gotta catch them all. And then 4, the fire. It was late, probably around 2 in the morning. The thunder was cracking, the lightning was flashing blue, and we saw a figure fly overhead. When it flew over the brass tower, that's when it caught. The fire spread quickly, despite the rain we thought would prevent it. My dear friends were inside, Sparky, Rainer, and Pyro. They loved to play in that tower, jump from post to post, battling and training themselves just for fun. I never thought it was an issue, but when the fire spread down, they were goners. Rainer tried to protect them. Sparky even took a lightning bolt for them, but nothing worked. Even Pyro stood in the flames and tried to absorb them. Nothing. Luckily, Ho-Oh had a spot for them in his plane, and now whenever I see one of the legendary beasts, I smile and shed a tear for the boys I lost oh so long ago. Perhaps, after the plug is pulled, I'll be with them once more. And at 3, Genesect. Genesect? More like genocide. That monster is unstable and should be put in the Pokemon graveyard with the others. They were already temperamental to begin with, but their leader, the Red Genesect, is ruthless. He's the one who started the original Pokemon War, the one that claimed the lives of millions of Pokemon. The Pokemon who put their lives on the line should be the ones who remain, not these goddamn unhinged monstrosities. They've nearly leveled all of Castelia City at this point. The psychopathic group led by their leader won't let any human live. I've managed to hide inside the debris of one of the buildings, but the moment they suspect something, I believe it will be the end. They don't seem to speak aloud, not even saying their name. I'm guessing it's some form of psychic communication, or something of the electronic equivalent, since they look like machines. Oh no. While writing that last line, I moved a piece of wall, probably around the size of a medium rock, but that was enough for the Genesect to hear.
Number 2, missing Pokemon trainers. My friends and I have always loved playing Pokemon Go since it first came out. We're all Team Valor. One of our favorite things after the school day is done is to walk home together catching Pokemon, battling Team Rocket, hitting up Pokestops, and stopping to battle at the local gym. It's kinda like our routine. We do it every morning on the way to school, meeting up to walk together, and at the end of every school day on the way home. We all have different favorite Pokemon that are our favorites for leaving in the gym. Mine has always been Emboar. However, one day when we walked home, we noticed one of our friends in the group was missing. Maybe they went home early, I thought, because they got sick in the middle of the day. But when we stopped to hit up the gym without them, we also noticed that their Pokemon was gone, despite the fact that all of ours remained, as no one had defeated our hold on that gym. The next day our friend wasn't at school either, and when we all decided to stop by their house at the end of the day to check on them, we noticed the house appeared abandoned. Even weirder, another of our friends from the morning had seemingly disappeared from the beginning of the school day to the end. We also stopped by their home and it seemed also abandoned. Their Pokemon was also missing from the gym we'd taken that morning. We all have since stopped playing, and we're all still here, but the other 2 and their families seem to have disappeared without a trace. Number 1, Lavender Town Syndrome. While it was never proven to be true, Lavender Town Syndrome was rumored to be a mental illness caused by certain high-pitched binaural tones in the game from the original Lavender Town theme. Apparently the music had to be changed later on because these tones were causing children in Japan who played the game to experience depression, and even cause cases of self-harm among children between ages 7 to 12.
And at 10, the Night of Lightning. The gates are sealed. The attackers have retreated, mostly. There are a few stragglers left who wish to see their kingdom burn. They think they can be a hero. They think they'll save their kingdom. Pathetic. Their kingdom is ours and shall remain as such for eternity. The storms here are common, even more common than a battle in a tavern. However, the wonder of this village is at its end. We've had fun, but I think it's time to take another, and begin our reign over the regions. We have Unova, now time for another. Wait. Why did the storm just get worse? Just as I think that, I see it. The darkest shadow one could ever think of flying over the clouds. It's as dark as Darkrai, but not him. I see a faint amount of blue shining through the clouds. It's almost like a god. And then you hear it. You have lost your way. Return to your righteous path or face annihilation. It's as if it just spoke to our brains. We look at each other and everyone else heard the same. We will fill this land with our righteous fury, I cry at the beast. That was the wrong idea. It started. the lightning. It came down as if on its own, with the fury of 100,000 men. Every time a bolt vanished, another one came down, as if God had started to eviscerate the human race. However, all around us the world was normal. It was a bright and sunny day, but not over us. As my men fell, I see him descend. Zekrom. And a 9 demise. It's only happened once, the evisceration of the Kalos region. It happened oh so long ago that I don't even think the elders remember, but I do. I am not like most elders. I am AZ, and I remembered when the legendary Pokemon Yveltal finished its first life cycle. It's unknown when it was born or created, but when it was finished with this mortal plane, it didn't go quietly. The destruction was vast, and the casualties greater than even the Pokemon War which occurred after. Kalos, the region which this Pokemon called home, was destroyed, leveled by what can only be described as a catastrophic event. The death of this Pokemon sucked the life out of the region, as if the region sacrificed itself in order to preserve the Pokemon. Yveltal was saved and created a cocoon of sorts that acted as a shield for the coming few thousand years, until one group, known as Team Flare, decided that disturbing the Pokemon that caused the end of the region was a good idea. Of course, they didn't know about the evisceration, they only thought those were stories, but alas, I wait for the destruction of the region once more. And if Yveltal won't do it, I'll do it myself. If you guys are enjoying the video, be sure that you hit that like button because it really helps us out and lets us know what you want to see more of. Thanks. And it ate Quake. The ground shook beneath my very feet. This wasn't uncommon for Hoenn. Thanks to the legends, however, it always made us worry that the legendary Groudon would rise again. The ground trembles once more. This is more than just an ordinary aftershock. Something's wrong. I rush outside and see the storm forming. It's like the old legend. I grab my coat and head to the den, where there are officers set up preventing entry. I guess this is no mere storm, and the legend is true. The legendaries Groudon and Kyogre will rise again. They start evacuating once they hear the roar. The sound is amplified because of the cave, and then we hear another roar coming from behind us in the ocean. They usher us out of the city, leaving behind everything we own, and getting as many as possible onto Route 24. For a minute, the downpour stops. This makes people think that it's safe, and despite the police doing their best to hold them back, a man begins to return to his home. That's when Groudon bursts out of the ground, dropping a boulder on him. That's the day we left Red Hill City, and the last day that it was left standing.
Number 7. My friend Banette. Her favorite gift that she had gotten for her birthday was the Banette Polka Doll. It was so cute. She promised that she would take it with her everywhere and never leave it. But years passed, the doll became worn and was swapped out for newer toys. Eventually the girl who owned it got older and parted with the doll, throwing it into the trash. The trash, Banette thought as she lay discarded. I don't think so. When the girl got home, she saw Banette sitting once more on her bed, surrounded by a bunch of other dolls and plushies which had been torn apart and decapitated. She was too confused to react as the Banette seemed to come to life, surprising her. It leapt, feral, attacking her and mauling her face. She was dead before she could do anything. Never again would she abandon any of her dolls. Number 6. Charmander, is that you? This story happened to a friend of mine. My good friend Angie lives out in the country, pretty remote, and not a lot of people live around her and her family. It's just her and her dad and her little sister. They have a well out back, which is where all their water comes from in their house. I've never been a big fan of their water as it kind of has a funny smell to it. Whenever I would sleep over at Angie's, if I showered in the morning, I'd have to plug my nose because I found the smell so gross. Angie never seemed to notice it though. I guess she was just used to it. But one day, she did notice. For the first time ever, to her, the water smelled metallic. It felt hot too. She noticed while washing her hands, even in cold water, it was like it stung her skin. She decided to go out and check on the well. When she did, a bright light was coming from it. She opened up the well and looked down. Something bright was glowing down there, so she lowered a bucket and pulled it up, eager to see if something maybe had fallen into the well somehow. The contents of the bucket spilled out onto the grass, and she watched as the water made the grass smoke, scorching it as though it were acid. A creature tumbled from the bucket as well, and Angie, who was a big Pokemon fan, thought she recognized it. It looked like Charmander, but this Charmander looked angry and somewhat shriveled. It cried out. She reached out a hand, attempting to reassure the creature it would be fine. Charmander was her favorite Pokemon after all. The creature tilted its head, took in a little breath, and looked down at her hand, exhaling a bright, hot flame. Her hand caught fire. As she patted it on the ground, attempting to put out the fire, the creature scrambled out into the woods. dragon or real-world Charmander, whatever it was, has yet to be seen again by Angie, but she still bears the scars from when it burned her. While it may never return, she'll never forget. Number 5. Wartortle at the End of Time. My friend Charlie's brother Travis loved playing Pokemon. He prided himself on being the best trainer and made sure he always collected every single Pokemon in the games. He always bragged that he was the best in Pokemon battles, no matter which Pokemon game you were talking about: Red, Diamond, Ruby, Silver, Pokemon Go. He prided himself on being number 1. Or he used to. He doesn't play anymore, and when I asked Charlie why, he told me that something had happened to Travis while playing. Apparently, while playing Leaf Green, Travis said the game glitched out. The screen went black and then opened up on a very old-looking Wartortle. The Wartortle said that he was an immortal Wartortle who had been alive since the first days of Pokemon, and its spirit had lived even beyond that. The Wartortle survived in the game by feeding off of gamers' souls. It found that the better someone was at the game, the more nourishing their souls were. It had come, it said, for Travis's soul. Number 4. The Haunted Woods. The woods near my house were always quiet, until one night. I was walking home after playing at a friend's house. It was getting late and darker outside by the second, so I decided to take a shortcut through the woods. That's when I started to notice a whistling sound. I don't know why, but I was curious. I felt compelled to wander towards it, as though it were calling me. Later, I would realize why. It was the children's spirits. They only wanted to play. They only wanted more friends. But I became lost in the woods. Lost, as they had been lost before me. I never found my way out, collapsing on a stump, starved and thirsty as my organs began to shut down. My spirit merged with the stump then, became fused to it, and I too joined the whistling in the woods with my new friends as another ghostly phantom. Number 3. Buried Alive Model. It is rumored that the original final story of the Pokemon Tower featured a boss, originally known as the Buried Alive Model, but that the character was later replaced with the Marowak Ghost instead. This Buried Alive Model, also known as the Buryman script, involved you fighting a decaying human corpse appearing to be crawling out of the ground. It would battle you with 2 white hands, a Gengar, and a Muck. If you lost the battle, the corpse would cry out, "Finally, fresh meat!"
And a 2 framed. Officer, I swear I didn't do it. I wasn't even in Nimbasa City last week. I've been in Castelia City for the past month doing my research. What, filling up that Pokedex? You seem to have the Pokemon that appear after Mistralton, which means you have to have had passed through Nimbasa. Why would you go back? Because I missed stuff. Come on, there has to be an explanation for this. There is. You did it. We caught you on the cameras, you monster. What do you mean monster? Here, look at this and then tell me that's not you. It may look like me, but it's not. What do you think? Arceus just created another version of you to tear that old man apart? No, it wouldn't have been Arceus. What about the unknown? They were safe in Relic Castle. What about the Weather Trio? Unaccounted for, but we know it's not them. How? They don't have this kind of ability. What about a Ditto? A Ditto wouldn't be able to do that to a human. This was animalistic. How do you not remember? What if it was Zoroark? We hadn't considered that. Well, we can't have you blabbing now, can we? The illusion fades as Zoroark steps out from the shadows and reveals the bloody stained claws of the one, the only, Arceus. Finally, in number 1, Dream of Darkness. It started as sleep paralysis. It's a fairly common phenomenon, at least for me, when your mind wakes up but your body doesn't, and you're conscious and can see around you but can't move. Some people also have a blind spot while this happens, and most people believe it to be their sleep paralysis demon, since it can look like a person, but mine didn't. Mine looked odd. It had legs, but they were long and pointed. The arms were similar in a way, with wide hands thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. It had what looked like smoke coming off its shoulders, and the hair was similar. It stood there staring at me, like most sleep paralysis demons do, but then it started moving. It reached out a hand, and I watched it grab my face, as if trying to wake me up, but instead I fell back asleep. It fades to black and I'm back in my room. The demon is gone and I can finally move. It's still dark out, but my clock says 11 a.m. Concerned, I walk down the stairs and call out to my parents, asking them what's going on. They say nothing, so instead I call out to my sister. Nothing again. When I get down, I see why they didn't call. They were what can only be described as spread out across the room. The ceilings and walls were red and their heads were all removed. I close my eyes and I'm back in my room. The demon is gone and I can finally move. It's still dark out, but my clock says 11 a.m. And a 10 trapped in a cave. It was night. The wind was blowing ferociously, so I tried to find a cave. As I did, I saw a light nearby. I hid to make sure I wasn't attacked, but I saw a terrible sight. A Charizard and what I can only assume was his trainer were nearby. The trainer was on the ground, missing both of his legs. The Charizard looked terrible, like it was crying. I heard the trainer ask his Charizard, who he called Ruby, if she was hungry. She shook her head, but even I could hear her stomach rumble. He insisted that she tell him when she's hungry, since he wanted to help, but she continued to shake her head, telling him that she wasn't, as he pet her with his one remaining arm. Ruby hugged him, her eyes getting watery. "Ruby, if you don't eat, you'll starve." Ruby then began to cry hard, but her trainer reassured her that it's okay and that she had to eat. The man extended his arm towards Ruby, who stared at him, trying to hold back tears, and she reluctantly opened her mouth while the trainer slid his arm between her fangs. "Go on," he said, and she did. The man went to sleep, then Ruby cried even harder, because she knew what would happen the next time she got hungry. Jesus! Okay. If you're as depressed as I am now, hit the like button. It really helps us out. It helps boost us in the algorithm, and it also lets us know that you want more terrifying Pokemon creepypastas that just make me want to hug my dog. And at 9, Demise. It only happened once, the evisceration of the Kalos region. It happened oh so long ago that I don't even think the elders remember, but I do. I'm not like most elders. I am AZ, and I remember when the legendary Pokemon Yveltal finished off its first life cycle. It's unknown when it was born or created, but when it was finished with this mortal plane, it doesn't go quietly. The destruction was vast, and the casualties greater than even the Pokemon War that occurred afterwards. Kalos, the region which this Pokemon called home, was destroyed, leveled by what can only be described as a catastrophic event. The death of this Pokemon sucked the life of the region, as if the region sacrificed itself in order to preserve the Pokemon. Yveltal was saved and created a cocoon of sorts that acted as a shield for the upcoming few thousand years, until one group, known as Team Flare, decided that disturbing the Pokemon that caused the end of the region was a good idea. Of course, they didn't know about the evisceration, they only thought those were stories, but alas, I wait for the destruction of the region once more. And at 8, Charizard! I'm not kidding, that's actually how it's spelled. I know you're looking at me weird. Please don't, okay? I'm not meant to look like this. I used to be so happy. My friend loved me so much, but he would always hang out with his Charizard instead of me, since it was his starter after all. But it eventually ended up dying in a gym battle. He cried all day, and he thought another one would fix it, so he went to get another, but he was already carrying 6 of us. I told him that he could put me away for a little while. All I wanted to do was see him happy. So he did, but it was a very long time. While on the PC, I could feel myself warping. It sounds strange, I know, but all I could feel was my skeleton being pushed and pulled in every direction. At first it seemed like there was no point to this, but over time the others in the PC did the same. They each started warping into something twisted. Something we all wanted to be for our friend, our trainer. Eventually we all warped into variations of the Pokemon our trainer had lost. We were all deformed Charizards combined with our original forms. I used to be a Bulbasaur, now I am a Charizard. Kinda.
Number 5, From Within. This is a true story, one that warns of what can happen when the line between fantasy and reality begins to blur, when you become so invested in games that they become like real life. Isaiah played Pokemon more than he did anything else. Whether he was at school, at work, he would find ways to play. He preferred baths to showers actually, because it freed up his hands to play while washing. He was obsessed, to say the least. Isaiah had always wished that he could live life as though he were a real trainer. It was one day when he was in the bath playing Pokemon Red that he got more than he had bargained for when it came to that wish. He was trying to catch a Gengar, but during his attempt, a cutscene he'd never seen before started up and was triggered. The Gengar he saw in front of him looked hyper-realistic, more realistic than his console should have even been able to show. "Do you truly wish to become the best trainer?" the Gengar somehow asked him. He selected the option yes, but the Gengar demanded he speak aloud his answer. "Yes!" he cried out. The Gengar then seemed to leap forward toward him and then emerged from the screen. It grabbed his face in both hands and pulled him through the screen. And the game console splashed down into the bath. Isaiah was gone, but the game continued. Number 4, Nightmare Attack. This was an attack I noticed my Kadabra had one day while playing in a game. Not sure if it was an error or a glitch or exactly where it came from. I just know that this happened to me and I don't know why. When used, Nightmare would cause no harm to the Pokemon, but after the battle I noticed the trainers were different. They would pass out near the end of battle, either when I was about to lose or run or just upon victory even. They would faint, and then when I left and tried to wake them up, I would get this creepy flash of them smiling and foaming at the mouth, like some kind of jump scare card. This glitch or error, I don't know what it was so bad that I found myself unable to play my game, or any Pokemon games anymore, without thinking about it. It's not only haunted my own nightmares, but constantly haunts me when I think of the franchise. Has anyone else had this Kadabra attack or knows where it comes from?
Getting close to the end into number 3, Flash Caves. We all know that you don't need Flash to get through dark caves, but it certainly does help. However, if you decide to take the dark route, there's actually a trick that works with every Pokemon game. If you walk around for a while, you will eventually find a ladder that isn't actually on the map. It will play the sound of walking downstairs 4 times and then ask where you think you are. Then you are transported somewhere. You'll know when you can see and everything is in black and white. Eventually you will find yourself in a hole in the wall. Go through it and you will be free, but you won't be able to talk to NPCs anymore. In Pokemon Yellow, your Pikachu follower will become a ghost from the Pokemon Tower, and everything will still be in black and white. The only place where you can interact with trainers and Pokemon now is the cave where you use the glitch. However, every trainer you interact with says, "Do you know where you are?" And finally, in at number 1, Save Me. After being interested with Lavender Town Syndrome, I got a copy of the original game off of eBay just to see if it was real. When I got to Lavender Town though, there were no NPCs. Just one boy in the Pokemon Tower who was running in circles. He was on every level. Whenever I interacted with him, he would just say, "Save me." Now, I didn't mention this before, but my rival's name was Tyler, because it was actually suggested, not because I chose it. But that's weird, because this game is Japanese. I get to the top floor of the tower and the room shaped like a T. And then, remembering my rival, I ask out loud if this is Tyler. The child turns around and says, "Yes, save me," then starts a Pokemon battle. But he never threw out a Pokemon. He just stood there waiting. I ended up fainting him, and he said thank you. I fell asleep after what felt like hours, but when I wake up, I'm in a car seat in the back of a car holding a different Game Boy. I get out of the car frantically, leaving the Game Boy there, and I get some change off the ground and use a payphone to call my girlfriend. She cusses me out, saying that I should have just told her I was leaving, but at least she sold that damn Pokemon game I bought for too much money last year. I had been dragged into the game, and now another kid had just taken my place.
Number 10, No Turning Back. This had to have been some kind of weird bootleg version of the game, right? In this version of Pokemon Blue, I played as normal, except I could never turn back. And as I moved forward, everything became more distorted from reality. Every time I tried to turn around, the screen would get all wavy and bubbles would float across it. I'd faint and then reawaken just where I'd been. "You'll drown if you go back," a title card on the screen warned, and yet moving forward only made the game get weirder and exposed me to despicable horrors. Pokemon I'd never seen before that appeared to be wounded or falling apart or horrifically mashed together in some way. Around every corner was new horror, but there was no turning back. Number 9, Pokemon Poison. This is a story that happened to a friend of mine. My friend Heather was a collector of Pokemon bootlegs and EXEs. The creepier they were, the more she enjoyed them, until she played Pokemon Poison. That was a version that swore her off collecting these games, and she told me it's a game that takes the idea way too far. In the game, you play as a Pokemon trainer whose only goal is to poison as many people in Pokemon as possible. You are forced to custom make your own potions and poisons, but even if you just want to try and ignore this part of the game, it won't let you. When she decided to only make health potions, they all became corrupted and turned into poison that caused her Pokemon to die. Number 8. Where's Dad? This creepypasta begins like this. I have always been a really big Red fanboy in Pokemon, and I ended up buying a secondary Pokemon Red game online on eBay just so I could play through 2 games at once without having to worry about anything happening on my previous game with my pristine game save file. I noticed instantly upon receiving the cartridge that it looked different. The sticker didn't quite match up, The cartridge almost looked like it was made of a cheaper, almost translucent plastic by comparison. It was either a bootleg or it was manufactured somewhere very different from my original game. Still, I gave it a shot. Being a huge Red fan, one of my favorite parts of the game is when you examine the SNES in the Celadon department store, and Red says, "Dad would like this." But in this game, instead, Red said, "Where is Dad?" I hadn't experienced anything weird in-game until this moment. Nothing creepy, no Lavender Town music driving me insane, no ghost Pokemon crying blood, but this for some reason really bothered me. When I left the department store, I saw a shadowy figure waiting for me outside. When I went to talk to him, his name was ZD. He only spoke in ellipses, 3 dots. But talking to him initiated a trainer fight, except we didn't have any Pokemon in front of us. My only attack was Dad! I used that, and lunging out of the shadows, I saw a figure, a full-on corpse, rotting zombie. ZD, who I was fighting, stood for Zombie Dad, and his attack was Eat. And before we move on to this next point, if you are enjoying these creepypastas, these creepy stories with me, be sure to show us that you're having fun and give this video a thumbs up.
It had 7 Pokemon Deadly Y. It was the last day of school and I was screwing around, but then I noticed a Pokemon Y game still in its case laying on the ground. I picked it up and on the manual it said "My gift to you" from Noob. Whoever this Noob was had left the cartridge, so I decided to see what kind of terrible team he had. The title screen looked horrible. It said "Press Start to Die," and at the bottom of the screen it had the number 666 along with 2 candles sitting between the numbers. When I clicked start, the game flashed an image of dead people. I had to play this. I had to see what was going on. His save file was missing, so I made a new one. But Oak was there instead of Sycamore, and his face was distorted and he looked like he was going to die. Then he showed me Yveltal puking blood with bloodshot eyes and a bloody nose. Then he collapsed from his injuries. Halfway through into number 5, the fire. It was late, probably around 2 in the morning. The thunder was cracking, the lightning was flashing blue, and we saw a figure fly overhead. When it flew over the brass tower, that's when it caught. The fire spread quickly. Despite the rain we thought would prevent it, my dear friends were inside, Sparky, Rainer, and Pyro. They loved to play in the tower, jump from post to post, battling and training themselves just for fun. I never thought it was an issue, but when the fire spread down, they were goners. Rainer tried to protect them. Sparky even took a lightning bolt for them, but nothing worked. Even Pyro stood in the flames and tried to absorb them. Nothing. Luckily, Ho-Oh had a spot for them in his plane, and now whenever I see one of the legendary beasts, I smile and shed a tear for the boys I lost oh so long ago. Perhaps, after the plug is pulled, I will be with them once more. And at 4, Mount Silver. Years before you meet Professor Oak, he trained Red and got him to Mount Silver, but once Red gets there, he isn't heard from again. Oak travels there to see that Red has actually died, but his spirit is still there. All it says is "help me." Oak had to find another trainer worthy enough to make it to Mount Silver in order to free Red. The Elite Four is positioned in the perfect place to assure that they are your final test before making the climb. And when you finally make it, Red is surprised to see you, but without speaking, he engages you in a climactic battle that wages for an hour. When you finally defeated him, he says nothing, but smiles and leaves as he can finally pass on. Not being able to say, but showing with his smile, "Thank you."
Number 3, the mystery door. I had never been to this place. It was a department store that somehow appeared in a cave when I was playing Pokemon Red. I didn't know how it got there or where it came from, but I was curious. I went inside. There was a shop owner who looked normal, as well as some items for purchase. At the back of the store was a door, but when I approached it, the shop owner stopped and asked me, "Do you wish to open the mystery door?" My only option for responses was no. To which he'd respond, "Okay, if you change your mind, let me know. We can always talk about the cost to do so." I left the store, but every time I played would end up visiting it again during my session. It was such a weird place. The options for my answer always seemed to be the same, until one day they weren't. I noticed a second option. There was no, and then just an ellipses for another response. I chose the 3 little dots, to which the shop owner didn't respond. I was given another chance to choose between the same 2. This repeated a few times until I saw my character shudder and begin to vomit. Out of my insides emerged a tall, spindly creature shrouded in mist with bright red, glowing eyes. It stood tall with a twisted grin. "Time to pay the price," it said. I heard the echo of its voice in my mind. Number 2, Berry Forest. One time while I was in Berry Forest, I ran into a random girl there. Nothing too bad happened, but it was definitely a really creepy encounter. She asked me to come with her and become one with the forest. Then I watched her move into a tree. Cut into the tree was a perfect shape for her body. You don't need to leave ever if you join us, she told me. Number 1, Trading Places. My friend had loaned me their old Game Boy Color as my Switch had broken down recently, but it was covered by a warranty still, so I was just waiting to get it back, fully repaired. I used to love playing my Game Boy Color when I was younger. They gave me a few games along with it. Among them was a Barbie Genie game, a Legend of Zelda game, but I settled on a Pokemon game to play. However, the cartridge didn't look like any Pokemon game that I remembered. It had a picture of an intense looking Ditto on the front. Weirdly enough, the color of the Ditto was off and seemed to more match the color of the Game Boy instead. I paid it no mind, thinking that with age, maybe the color had changed, or maybe the cartridge was a little dirty. I popped the cartridge in and booted up the handheld console. Suddenly, I noticed it began to shift in my hands. I watched as the Game Boy appeared to melt out of my hands before emitting a bright, blinding white light. I shielded my eyes and turned away, and when I opened them, I noticed before me stood a giant Ditto, but shaped like me. Its face was wrong, but as it looked down at me, it appeared to fix that, matching my very own expression. Its skin was a little more pink than mine, but otherwise it was a perfect copy. The Ditto reached down and picked me up. I noticed that I couldn't move. I didn't have arms or legs. I noticed a border as well in my vision. Finally free, it said, my own face smiling down at me.